Well, I've always had a deep feeling for traditional country music. It lives probably grander in my heart than any of the rest of it. And Connie Smith is somebody that is a part of my life.
There was a time when he stood before tens of thousands of fans, mandolin in hand, silver hair glowing under the spotlight, yet inside he felt empty, like a man playing music for his own loneliness. Marty Stuart, the last cowboy of classic country, may never have exploded on the Billboard charts. But for those who listen to country with their hearts, he is the final keeper of America's soul. He played alongside Johnny Cash at just 13, walked into the Grand Ole Opry as if music had preordained his path. Marty seemed born to be a legend, but that light once burned him too. He wrestled with the dilemma between staying true to tradition or becoming the kind of modern star the industry wanted. He once chased fame so hard, it cost him his first love. He was swept up by the market's demands, only to quietly retreat, like the best man at the fading wedding of an old heritage, a misfit in the new world of Nashville. At 65, he still takes the stage as if he never left, with his long hair, flamboyant suits, and the mandolin once owned by Bill Monroe. But behind that vibrant image lies a winding journey marked by years of obscurity. No scandals, no new hits, no headlines. Just a man drifting between churches, museums, and tiny theaters, clinging to the last shred of authenticity in country music. Marty is more than an artist. He's a storyteller, a heritage curator, a living bridge between Hank Williams and the rising voices of Nashville. Marty Stuart's life proves that you don't have to be the loudest to be the most important. And perhaps, in a world increasingly shaped by trends, he stands as a quiet reminder that for music to endure, it must begin with an honest heart. Early life. Marty Stuart was born in 1958 in Philadelphia, not the big city in Pennsylvania, but a small town in Mississippi where faith and music went hand in hand with every family dinner. His mother was a Bible teacher. His father worked on the railroad, but carried within him the soul of an artist, passionate about the mandolin, the guitar, and Southern music. In that tiny world, Marty grew up between two contrasting currents: the echoes of Baptist hymns on Sunday mornings and the wail of guitar riffs from the AM radio every weekend night. From as early as age 5, Marty wasn't out playing ball like the other kids. Instead, he would sneak his father's guitar, listen to records by Flat and Scruggs, Hank Williams, and teach himself how to play note by note. But the strangest thing wasn't that he could imitate. It was that he could hear the soul of country music. While his classmates memorized lyrics just for fun, Marty would sit for hours dissecting how Johnny Cash leaned into a single word, or how Bill Monroe made the mandolin speak in place of lyrics. Encouragement came from his grandmother, the first person to tell him, "You're an artist. Don't let anyone take that away from you." It was she who took Marty to his first music festival, where a 12-year-old boy saw Connie Smith perform on stage for the first time, a moment no one could have guessed would shape the rest of his life. For a child devoted to the arts in a conservative rural town, Marty quickly became the odd one out. He grew his hair long, wore black, and spoke about country music as if it were a religion. Friends drifted away, teachers didn't understand, and neighbors whispered behind his back. But Marty never gave up. At just 13, he did what no one in Philadelphia, Mississippi dared to dream. He joined the touring band of Lester Flatt, one of the founding fathers of bluegrass. No one really knows how a preteen boy managed to break into the professional world, only that he carried a little mandolin and the unyielding spirit of a musical preacher. From then on, he left school, left home, and began living like a grown man, sleeping on tour buses, performing every night, and learning to survive in a world that had no pity for a childhood left behind. But in his heart, there was no bitterness, only one unshakable belief. If I can hold on to what's real, music will never abandon me. Early career. At 13 years old, while most of his peers were still learning how to solve geometry problems, Marty Stuart stood in a smoke-filled honky-tonk bar, mandolin in hand, playing alongside Lester Flatt, a bluegrass legend and former member of the Foggy Mountain Boys. No one asked the pubescent kid if he was scared or homesick. They only cared about one thing. Did he play in time? Did he merge with the soul of the song? In truth, Marty didn't just merge, he absorbed music as if it were his native language. During those teenage years, he learned more than any school could ever teach. How to stay in rhythm when a string breaks, how to handle the cold stares of a half-drunk bar crowd, how to breathe steadily on endless road trips across America. It was a harsh education, where every night on stage was an exam, and every legend decades older was a silent mentor. When Lester Flatt passed away in 1979, Marty lost the greatest guiding figure of his life. But instead of turning back, he stepped even deeper into the heart of country music, joining the band of Johnny Cash. At that point, Cash was already a global icon, while Marty was still just a long-haired kid in a fur-lined jacket, clutching his mandolin like a lucky charm. No one believed he'd last long next to the Man in Black, a man known for his strict standards and artistic intensity. But Marty didn't just last. He became an indispensable part of Cash's band for over 6 years. During that time, he learned how to tell stories through music, how to turn sorrow into lyrics, how to survive in an industry that could swallow anyone who missed a beat. At the same time, he began to experiment with his own voice and guitar. By the late 1980s, after a period working as a session musician for artists like Doc Watson and Bob Dylan, Marty finally stepped out from the shadows of the legends, both literally and figuratively. In 1985, he released his first solo album, Busy Bee Cafe, a raw blend of traditional bluegrass and the nuanced touch of a man who had been living like a grown-up since he was 13. Though it didn't make a commercial splash, that album was Marty's declaration. I am not anyone's shadow. Career success. Marty Stuart didn't rise to fame through sudden hype. He was a slow-burning flame, steadily spreading through the world of country music for over 4 decades. After years of apprenticeship and touring with legends like Lester Flatt, Doc Watson, and serving as guitarist in Johnny Cash's band, Marty stepped into the spotlight with a musical identity that couldn't be mistaken for anyone else's. A blend of traditional honky-tonk, classic bluegrass, and the rebellious spirit of rockabilly. In 1989, he released Hillbilly Rock, a pivotal album that propelled him into the mainstream. Its title track, with its driving rhythm and distinctly Southern performance style, put Marty on the map at a time when Nashville was dominated by polished, radio-friendly names. He didn't just revive the image of long-haired cowboys in flashy suits and echoing mandolins. He brought back a raw, honest, deeply American way of storytelling through music. Soon after, hits like Tempted Little Things, Burn Me Down, and Now That's Country solidified his place in the genre. But the real turning point came with his collaboration with Travis Tritt, a like-minded ally in the fight to preserve authentic country music. Their duet, The Whiskey Ain't Workin', not only won a Grammy, but also became an anthem for the no-hats generation, artists who rejected the label-mandated cowboy image to protect their individuality. Their joint album, This One's Gonna Hurt You, 1992, became one of the most defining works of the decade, both artistically and culturally. Yet Marty was never content with simply producing commercial hits. In 1999, he released The Pilgrim, a concept album widely regarded as his most heartfelt work. Based on a true story of love, faith, and redemption in his home state of Mississippi, The Pilgrim marked the pinnacle of his musical storytelling, layered, introspective, and stripped of any gloss. Though it was commercially overlooked at release, the album has since been recognized as a masterpiece. Marty continued to experiment and expand the boundaries of country music with albums like Soul's Chapel, 2005, a tribute to Southern gospel, and Badlands, Ballads of the Lakota, a work highlighting his empathy and advocacy for Native American rights. On Ghost Train, the Studio B sessions, 2010, he returned to the legendary RCA Studio B and recorded using vintage equipment to recapture the soul of classic Nashville. With Way Out West, 2017, produced by Mike Campbell of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, he transported listeners to a cowboy desert dreamscape with psychedelic tones reminiscent of Ennio Morricone. Beyond being an artist, Marty became a torchbearer. Between 2008 and 2014, he hosted The Marty Stuart Show, a television music program styled after the classic Grand Ole Opry, where he invited both young and veteran artists to perform songs that had long been forgotten by mainstream country shows. At the same time, he formed the Fabulous Superlatives, one of Nashville's finest backing bands, featuring Kenny Vaughan, Harry Stinson, and Chris Scruggs, together creating performances that were as tight as they were soul-stirring, from churches and county fairs to major theaters. This relentless dedication earned him numerous accolades: 5 Grammy Awards, the Americana Lifetime Achievement Award, Grand Ole Opry membership since 1992, and induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2020. But perhaps his greatest reward has been the unwavering respect of his peers, from Johnny Cash and Merle Haggard to Willie Nelson, who saw in Marty not just a musician, but a guardian of country music's soul in an era increasingly defined by commercialization. Whether under the spotlight of a grand stage or quietly backstage at a community event, Marty Stuart has never abandoned what makes him unique: an unwavering commitment to his identity. And because of that, he's not just an artist. He's a keeper of memory, a bridge between the past and present of American music. Personal life. Unlike the dazzling image on stage, long hair, embroidered suits, and a blazing guitar full of magic, Marty Stuart's personal life has been a quiet journey, marked by many turns and fractures not easily explained. In a musical world that spins fast and breaks easily, he chose to love, lose, and love again, with a resilience that's rare. Marty's first marriage came as a shock to many in the industry. In 1983, he married Cindy Cash, the only daughter of Johnny Cash. Their relationship began like destiny, 2 young souls raised in the towering shadows of country icons, meeting while Marty was still a musician in Johnny's band. But what began in admiration and harmony quickly exposed their differences. They were too young, too unstable, and too divergent in how they envisioned the future. The marriage ended quietly after just 5 years. No scandal, no accusations. Just 2 people unable to hold on in the whirlwind of fame and familial expectations. After the breakup, Marty became more private, but also dove deeper into his music. For a time, he lived almost in isolation, writing, recording, and performing. In a rare interview, he admitted, "In the world of country music, even with all the applause, you can still feel so lonely that you need music just to save yourself." And then, love returned, in the most unexpected way, and from the woman he once called a living legend. In 2008, Marty married Connie Smith, the legendary country singer of the 1960s, 17 years his senior. The twist? Marty had loved her since he was just 12 years old. After seeing her perform at a fair as a boy, he told his mother, "I'm going to marry her one day." Everyone thought it was just a child's dream, but Marty never forgot. Before finding her final home in Marty's heart, Connie had walked through 3 marriages, 3 attempts to define happiness, and 3 silent releases when things seemed settled. Each man left more than a name on a legal record. They etched quiet scars on her soul. Her first marriage came in her early 20s. Jerry Smith, her first husband, was neither famous nor from the music world. It was a marriage more out of responsibility than love. Connie was pregnant, and as she later shared, marriage felt like the right thing to do. They had a son together, but soon their differences in spirit and vision emerged. She sang on stages. He lived under the weight of fatigue. There was no strong bridge between them. In 1966, they quietly divorced, just as Connie was at the peak of her fame with a string of country hits. But loneliness didn't leave her for long. That same year, almost as an emotional reflex, she entered a second marriage with Jack Watkins, a struggling TV actor. It wasn't love. It was a temporary grasp for comfort. The relationship was so brief that there's little public record of it. They had a daughter, but barely lived together afterward. Connie has rarely spoken of that time except for one sentence. "We shouldn't have gotten married." It wasn't bitter, nor angry. Just a sigh from someone who realized she had tried to fill an emptiness the wrong way. Her third marriage came in 1968. This time, Connie thought she'd found something close to peace. Marshall Haynes, a martial arts instructor, wasn't from the music world, but seemed grounded, strong, and quiet. They spent over 2 decades together, had 3 children, and for many years Connie stepped away from the spotlight, choosing to be a wife, a mother, a devoted believer. She once said music was no longer her top priority because family had become her world. But music is in the blood, and blood never stops flowing. When she returned to writing, recording, and touring in the 1980s, cracks began to show. Marshall didn't hold her back, but he didn't walk beside her either. They drifted, not from betrayal, but from a growing gap between 2 separate worlds. They divorced in 1992, quietly, without public drama. Just a silent end to a long chapter once filled with hope. Marty reconnected with Connie in the 1990s after both had weathered personal storms. Connie, then a 3-time divorcee with 5 children, initially rejected the idea of a relationship due to their age gap and heavy pasts. But Marty's patience, his genuine admiration, and his quiet, non-judgmental presence gradually opened her heart. Their love grew away from the spotlight. No social media, no red carpets. Just shared recording sessions, small tours, and quiet nights in a wooden house in Tennessee. What makes this love story extraordinary isn't just the age difference, but how they healed one another. Marty once said, "Connie is the only one who truly understands that music isn't my job, it's how I breathe." And she never tried to change that. When Connie was asked what makes her happiest in the marriage, she simply smiled and said, "Peace. Marty brought me a peace I never knew." Though they have no children together, they've built a tightly knit family, where Connie's children and even the band members call Marty the keeper of the flame. He hasn't built the image of a traditional model husband. Instead, he shows up, quietly, steadfastly, and without fanfare. What's remarkable is that in over 2 decades together, Marty and Connie have never let the media intrude on their private life. No scandals, no gossip, only guitars and hand-holding behind the curtains. They still tour together, whether on small-town stages or in rural churches, and often share the spotlight to sing as one. 2 generations, 2 once-broken souls, now fused together. In a rare moment of candor, Marty said, "It took me almost a lifetime to understand that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing the same person every day, even after you've seen all their cracks." That sentence, perhaps, is the purest summary of his personal life. Unvarnished, imperfect, yet true and utterly unshakable. Legacy and impact. Some artists are remembered for the number of records sold, the awards on their shelves, or the sold-out stadiums. But Marty Stuart, with his rhinestone-embroidered suits, mandolin always at the ready, and silver hair blowing like a Western ghost, leaves behind something else. A soul, an identity. A belief that country music is not just a genre, it's a culture, a bloodline running through the veins of America. For more than half a century, Stuart has not only lived off music, but lived for music. He's won 5 Grammy Awards, been inducted into the Grand Ole Opry, praised by critics as the guardian of country's classic heart in modern times, and served as a vital figure in preserving the cultural heritage of Latin Appalachian America. More than just expressing it in sound, Stuart founded the Congress of Country Music, a national museum housing over 20,000 rare artifacts, from Hank Williams's guitar to Johnny Cash's stage-worn suits, unreleased recordings, and even Stuart's own glittering stage outfits. In Stuart's hands, the past doesn't gather dust, it lights up. He has brought once-forgotten melodies back into the hearts of younger audiences through albums like Ghost Train, the Studio B Sessions, and Way Out West, works that both honor the legends and innovate with a modern musical mindset. Few country artists dare to blend psychedelic, surf rock, and traditional gospel in a single album. But for Stuart, that's how he breathes. Marty's influence doesn't lie in screaming crowds. It lies in the quiet reverence of those who truly listen. Fellow musicians call him a bridge between generations, from Willie Nelson to Chris Stapleton, from Emmylou Harris to Tyler Childers. He once stood on stage beside Johnny Cash, his spiritual mentor and final confidant. And in turn, he now uplifts the next generation with what he himself had to earn. Not technique, but the unwavering spirit of living and dying for the music. To the public, Marty Stuart is not a textbook country star. He is a symbol of non-compromise. As the industry chases pop-driven trends, Stuart holds firmly to the pedal steel, the fiddle, the banjo, and the stories of wild, dusty lands. As Nashville shifts, he retreats to the margins, because there he can speak his truth without asking permission. That is the real legacy, not just leaving behind great recordings, but leaving behind a fierce, unshakable loyalty to a musical soul. Marty Stuart doesn't try to make country music cooler. He simply proves that country has always been cool, raw, and beautiful if we're willing to listen with our hearts. Present life. Though his hair has turned silver and the digital era continues to push traditional country music further into the shadows, Marty Stuart still takes the stage each night as if it were his last time playing. Not to prove his name, that's long been settled, but to protect the soul of a genre that's slowly being forgotten. And in recent years, he's done so with undiminished resolve. In 2024, he and his band, the Fabulous Superlatives, appeared on NPR's Tiny Desk Concerts, a minimalist performance space known for its raw authenticity, where every lyric and note rings out plainly, untouched by studio trickery. Marty sat there among acoustic guitars and soft lights, with the calm gaze of someone who's lived through half a century of music. And in his eyes, the audience could see the entire history of Nashville. That same year, he released Altitude, an album rich in philosophy, where country music intertwined with spacey tones, creating melodies that floated like the feelings he still holds for the Old South. The album didn't yield commercial hits, but critics hailed it as a spiritual voyage between the classic and the cosmic. In 2025, Marty didn't slow down. On the contrary, he embarked on his most extensive U.S. tour since the pandemic, with over 35 performances stretching from Nashville to California. The show at the Grand Ole Opry, where he first set foot at age 13, was seen as a symbolic homecoming. A night where the audience didn't just hear music, but witnessed a living piece of American heritage. On that stage, he performed instrumental tracks from Space Junk, a collection of wordless soundtrack pieces he composed during a period of introspection, like a quiet conversation between his spirit, the universe, and the past. Remarkably, 2025 also saw his collaboration with Chris Stapleton on the All-American Road Show tour. More than just a connection between two generations, it was a declaration. Country music is still alive, as long as there are artists like Marty Stuart standing center stage, playing straight from the heart. Beyond performing, he's quietly continued work on his Congress of Country Music project in his hometown of Philadelphia, Mississippi. It's not just a museum, it's a living sanctuary for country music, displaying over 20,000 artifacts collected over a lifetime, from Hank Williams's guitar to handwritten notes by Johnny Cash. For Marty, this is a place where the old musical spirits aren't buried. They're simply waiting to be heard again. At age 66, while many of his peers have retired or stopped creating, Marty Stuart still keeps a grueling tour schedule, still writes music daily, still records, and still gives voice to the Old South he cherishes. He doesn't need fanfare to be remembered, just a mandolin, a pair of boots, and a quiet audience willing to listen. Because for Marty, this is no longer just a career. It's a life. It's the reason for being. Marty Stuart isn't the kind of name that shows up loudly on magazine covers or on trending lists every week. But he is a quiet icon, enduring, steady, like the sound of the mandolin that has followed him since he was 5 years old. Once a strange kid teased at school for loving outdated music, he is now the keeper of the soul of classic country, a genre long forgotten in this noisy modern age. He didn't just survive the times, he walked straight through them, holding on to the belief that true value never goes out of style. From a child who left home at 13 to join Lester Flatt's band, to a 66-year-old man still standing on the Grand Ole Opry stage as if it were his very first night, Marty has never let go of the reason he began: a love for honest music and deep reverence for those who came before. And what about you? After everything you've learned about him, what is it about Marty Stuart that you can't look away from? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe the world needs more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. Let's keep walking this journey together with people who live truly, love deeply, and never, ever give up.